to your reaction to the administration's firing of Joint Chiefs of Staff Chairman C.Q. Brown Jr., as well as the plans to lay off thousands of Pentagon civilian employees. Is there any justification for these moves?
Look, I mean, I think the purging of top qualified senior military general and flag officers who have served 30 to 40 years in uniform under Republican and Democratic administrations. I mean, there was no call for that. And these are some of the very best that our military have in very senior roles, of course, in the most senior being the chairman and Chairman Brown. Look, this is someone that is battle tested. These are battle tested leaders. And I think aside from their firings, you also had the three JAG officers for the Army, Navy, and Air Force also fired. And those are the people that keep the checks and balances on the system as well. So I think all of this is very concerning. And what you saw was a massive purge. And I think it's important to remember that an apolitical military is the pillar of our democracy. When you start to politicize our military, and that's exactly what you're seeing now, that is going to weaken our military, and that is a threat to our national security.
So President Trump earlier this week blamed Ukraine for starting the war with Russia. He finally reversed course on those comments yesterday. It took 4 days to do it. And the White House refused to co-sponsor a UN resolution backing Ukraine's territorial integrity, instead offering a less specific text defining Ukrainian sovereign land while insisting Ukraine sign over half of its mineral wealth to the U.S. Given the favorable terms the administration appears to be offering Russia and President Vladimir Putin, how likely is a peace deal to be reached that does not weaken both Ukraine and Europe's security?
Well, unfortunately, I mean, the rhetoric coming out of this administration is not setting up Ukraine to be successful in any types of negotiations. I mean, taking membership to NATO off the table and essentially saying that Russia gets to keep all of the territory that it has under its control that, has been taken from Ukraine. I mean, you're just giving chits away to Russia and further weakening Ukraine's stance at the table. So I'm not sure who we're negotiating on behalf of, but it does seem like every time this administration speaks on Ukraine, you're hearing the parroting of Kremlin talking points. And this is exactly what Putin wants. And unfortunately, the administration, the president, is playing right in to Putin's hands. And I think European allies and Ukraine are rightfully very scared about that and concerned.
Let me elaborate on that with the New York Times, which reports Trump is in the middle of executing one of the most jaw-dropping pivots in American foreign policy in generations. And former National Security Advisor John Bolton said the president's proposed deal to end the war in Ukraine comes pretty close to surrender to Putin's objectives. I mean, how do you overall interpret Trump's pretty shocking approach to the war?
I mean, it's hard to interpret. I mean, what we are seeing in real time is an undoing of American foreign policy towards Russia for the last 80 years. So to try and understand and get in the mindset of why we are letting Russia, who invaded its sovereign neighbor, have the upper hand at the negotiating table, I think is stunning to everyone and very concerning. And that's why you're seeing, people like John Bolton and others, including in Congress, speak out against this.
Okay. Jeff Mason covers the White House for Reuters, and he joins me now. Jeff, I'm going to get to some questions just a moment, but can you comment on what we were just discussing? Is there discussion or reason for bringing in this new General Dan Kane now to be the chairman of the Joint Chiefs? Because by Dan's description, Dan DeLuce, of course, the reporter of whom I'm speaking, he doesn't seem like an obvious choice to take this position.
I mean, I would defer to Dan in terms of the military sort of background, which was really good context. The political background is I've seen that the incoming, if he's confirmed, chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff has worn a MAGA hat before and appears to be supportive of Trump. So that must have been, or very well may have been, shall we say, a key ingredient in how the president made that decision. And I don't mean just wearing a hat, but the point is that President Trump is someone who prizes loyalty above all things. And we've seen in his first month in office and this second term in office that he has had no sort of qualms about going for exactly what he wants and getting exactly what he wants in terms of the people around him and in terms of the policies that he's implementing. So I think he's applying that same criteria to the military.
All right. The first question I want to ask you after that one, thank you for answering that one. President Trump, as we watch him at CPAC, acknowledged Friday that Russia did, in fact, start the war in Ukraine. I mean, we've all known that, but it is not in his nature to backtrack or correct any of his previous statements. Do we know what led to the somewhat qualified reversal?
Well, I think your emphasis on the word qualified there is important. He said that Russia had started the war, but he went on to say that President Zelensky shouldn't have allowed that to happen. So it was kind of a walk back, but not entirely a walk back. I don't. You're absolutely right, Alex. President Trump is not someone to issue corrections. I think he was just acknowledging a fact that you just acknowledged as well, that we all know that war started because of an invasion by Russia into Ukraine and not the other way around. But it didn't show us, he didn't display in that comment any sort of backing down in his criticism of President Zelensky, who of course has been leading his country throughout this war.
Yeah. President Trump, earlier it was on Truth Social, he urged Elon Musk to be even more aggressive. How much more aggressive can Musk be, and what are the risks of him being more aggressive?
Well, I mean, I would answer that question by looking at numbers. Both the president and Elon Musk have said that they're targeting $1 trillion in cuts from the government. And Mr. Musk has also said an ideal situation would be $2 trillion. So the president didn't reference that number in his social media post, but surely I think that's a reference to the possibility that Mr. Musk could do even more. And President Trump, I was in the Oval Office when the two of them were taking questions from reporters a little over a week ago. He showed there how much support that he wants to give to Musk. And this is just, a further indication not only of his support and the mandate that he believes or that he wants to give to Musk, but also the fact that he wants him to go even further. So any of the criticisms that Democrats and others, and not just Democrats, have been making about this, falling on deaf ears.
Is there word on which departments and agencies, Jeff, are next on the chopping block?
He's already said that the Department of Education is coming up next. We, of course, know what he's done with USAID. Also expecting some big cuts at the Pentagon, which I know NBC and MSNBC have reported on, as has Reuters. I can't tell you other ones, but I can say that I think that they're looking at everything, and that is absolutely at the top of President Trump's agenda.
Yeah, seems like nothing's off the table. Let me play for you a pretty heated exchange. It's between President Trump and Maine Governor Janet Mills. This is from yesterday. Listen to this.
Is Maine here, the governor of Maine?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you not going to comply with it?
I'm complying with state and federal law.
Well, we are the federal law. Well, you better do it. You better do it because you're not going to get any federal funding at all if you don't. And by the way, your population, even though it's somewhat liberal, although I did very well there, your population doesn't want men playing in women's sports. So you better comply because otherwise you're not getting any federal funding.
See you in court.
Every state, good. I'll see you in court. I look forward to that. That should be a real easy one. And enjoy your life after governor because I don't think you'll be in elected politics.
Deep sigh. Does this administration thrive, Jeff, on exchanges like that?
Oh, sure. I mean, President Trump loves to have exchanges like that, whether it's with an elected official or a Democratic governor.
Mr. Allen, to you first. The former Joint Chiefs of Staff, C.Q. Brown. This man spent 4 decades in the military. He's a fighter pilot with thousands of hours of flight time. He's an instructor. This man has flying in combat, I think something like 300 hours. What should we make of his firing and the tonight shakeups at the Pentagon? One can't say he wasn't qualified for the job.
No, he was certainly qualified for the job, Stephanie, and also in a job that's largely supposed to be apolitical. What we can make of his firing is that he was caught up in basically what President Trump describes as an effort to get rid of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the government. CQ Brown had spoken out during the Black Lives Matter movement about the importance of diversity and inclusion, and we've seen that in our armed forces over the years with the integration of the military before many other institutions were integrated in the United States. So what we've seen here is basically a bloodbath at the Joint Chiefs of Staff, not only CQ Brown, but also the Chief of Naval Operations and the Vice Chair of the Vice Chair of the Joint Chiefs being sacked tonight. This is something that will sort of go down in history, not only for that, but because of the person that the president has now appointed, Dan Kane, a lieutenant general who did not have any of the prerequisite jobs that typically, under a law, someone is supposed to have before they become chairman of the Joint Chiefs. The president can waive that, but historically we've seen a real step up ladders so that you end up with somebody who really knows what they're doing in that job.
So people are warning that Trump, again, he is a security threat within and beyond his own country. There's lots to criticize about American foreign policy. For far too long, for decades, probably since before Vietnam, the United States foreign policy has generally been flawed, to say the least. Often, and this was bipartisan, the United States was not the good guy in a lot of its foreign interventions. Nonetheless, the way in which Trump is like, oh, we're going to be America first, we're going to get out of the world, isn't a principled rejection of intervention. It's, we're going to not intervene when it's our buddies like Vladdy. But if, for example, a country was to stand up to us and say, we don't want to be a part of the United States, then it's tariffs, then it's the threat of war, whether it's economic war or direct literal warfare. He's been threatening countries. So this isn't, oh, America's going to get out of being the world police, which a lot of people might agree with. This is, we're going to let Vladdy, Mr. Putin run Ramshaw over Eastern Europe. And we're going to let the Saudis do all manner of evil things and Israel and all of that. But we're going to make our real enemies, Canada, Denmark, Greenland, Panama, Mexico, and on and on and on. This doesn't make America safe, and it doesn't make the world safe.